joined by another amazing guest, art psychotherapist, supervisor, and lecturer, Kristina Stamatiou. How are you? Okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
How's work getting on for you? You been okay?
How was what? Sorry.
How's life for you so far? You been okay?
Yeah. No, things have been okay. Yeah, challenging to past 2 years, I think, but for everyone. But yeah,
Yeah,
they've been
how's
good.
this last couple of years been for you? Have you been okay?
Yeah, I think pretty much the same for. Well, I don't want to say everyone's in the same boat because we're definitely not. But yeah, it's been challenging. I think grief has been um, around quite a bit for the majority of us. So trying to kind of navigate through all that loss and grief for the last 2 years. But yeah, it's been okay, and I've had my art, and I've had a few things to help me along the way. So yeah.
Good. That's brilliant. And were you still able to work as well over the lockdowns or through Zoom and so forth like that?
Yeah, fortunately, we were really fortunate. So actually, before the pandemic, I did an online diploma, so almost like a sixth sense, really. So I did an
Yeah.
online diploma to work with clients online, mainly because I found that working with especially teenagers or young adults who are away at college or university, or parents with children at home, I found that it was quite difficult for them to take the time off work or picking up their children, or in between kind of universities to travel back down to me. So I wanted to do this online diploma to be able to kind of connect with them online, which probably would have been a lot easier for them. So yeah, during the pandemic, it was good to transfer those skills that I got or gained through that
Mm,
training.
that's
And yeah,
amazing.
fortunately, I was able to work with them online.
That's brilliant. And what was that through work, this diploma, or was that like your own kind of individual kind of task for you to do yourself?
Yeah, so I didn't need to do it, but yeah, it was yeah, just oh sorry, something just popped up on my
That's all right.
laptop. The joys of all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was yeah, no, I decided to do that myself, and just understand Zoom a little bit more. I never
Mm,
really used it before, the training, and there's a few other online kind of ways of communicating, like with therapy with clients. So
yeah.
like instant messenger. So it was a brand new world to me. I was
Yeah.
so used to face-to-face therapy.
Yeah.
So yeah, learning all the different skills, I think, and people like to communicate in their own ways. Like
They
some
do.
people don't like camera, some people don't like face-to-face, some people prefer instant messenger, email therapy. So it was yeah, it was great to be able to learn that, because I guess my background never gave us that online insight.
Yeah, I want to get into that actually in a bit, actually, about how you felt people kind of deal with different situations like face to face or online or instant messenger. I mean, for you, how did you find getting into Zoom, like just like doing all your work over Zoom? Because I know it's like Marmite, isn't it, with a lot of people, whether they either hate it or they love it. I mean, for you, how did you find it doing
Yeah,
Zoom?
yeah. Again, fortunately, because I had that experience a couple of years before, and I started seeing clients a couple of years before online, but it was virtually very few. Um, I think I was very reluctant. I think coming from quite a traditional um, psychotherapy sort of background, I felt it was so important for me to be in the same space as another human being, to see
Mm,
their body language, things that sometimes we don't see on Zoom. Just someone's body twitching or stiffening after they say certain things, or um yeah, I think all that comes into play when you are face to face with a client. You kind of notice things a lot more. So I was reluctant, but I guess I was so happy to be able to continue working with my clients through this new kind of cyber world,
yeah,
um, and continue the connection. Although a very different connection, it was still a connection,
yeah,
um, and quite strong at that as well.
yeah. Because you started in 2015, didn't you? Your
Yeah.
psychotherapy.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
graduated in 2015. Yeah, I finished the training. So it's a 2 years master's. then you hopefully try and find work after it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, did you get work? Were you lucky enough to get work straight away, or was it like a little while until you actually got into the proper world of it?
Unfortunately, I found Grief Encounter straight away.
Mm.
So as soon as I graduated, I found Grief Encounter quite immediately after, actually. So I graduated in July, and then I started working for Grief Encounter in September of the same year.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And was it like a kind of shock to you? Was it completely different to what you expected in terms of going from, say, university to actually the real world of actually doing it? Were you like really fully prepared and gone for that transition from uni to work?
I don't think you're ever fully prepared. I don't think I'm ever fully prepared now, and it's like 7 years in. But so yeah, I think it was completely different. I think at university, I mean, you're still on placement, so you are seeing clients, but there was almost a hold in there from the department, from the lecturers, from the tutors, from being on placement and working with other professionals. There was definitely a safety and a containment that you found from university. And then for me, with Grief Encounter in particular, it's an amazing organization, charity to work for, but you're very much, especially if you're a therapist there, you're very much kind of working on your own. You do meet with the other staff members, but that's usually on training, staff meeting days, and they don't happen often. Again, they do provide supervision, which was another kind of holding as well. But yeah, you're very much on your own, trying to work everything out and find your own therapeutic voice, which is quite difficult.
Yeah. I mean, how was it for you working by yourself for the most part? Was it quite difficult for you, or did you find it all right after a little while of get used to it?
Yeah, I think I found it quite challenging actually at the beginning. It can feel quite isolating, and being a newly qualified therapist, I think you often think, well, shit, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Am I saying the right thing to these clients? Am I doing the right thing? And I think coming from that academic kind of background in terms of being held at university and taking all your anxieties and communicating them with your peers and your tutors and figuring things out together, then having to do that alone, I think that was a real shift and a real challenge for me.
Yeah.
But I kind of realized if I needed that help, I could reach out to my supervisor, communicate with him. So yeah, again, I was really fortunate to have a really good supervisor with Grief Encounter, which alleviated some of that. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah. Are you still there now, 6 years later?
I am. I'm still there 6 years later. They can't get rid of me. Yeah. So yeah, I've always had. I've kind of always had this kind of obsession, in a way, with grief. Sounds strange, but it's around, isn't it? And it's always there. It's part of being human, and it's something that really connects us. So I think I'll always be there in a weird way. I think it's, so I'm self-employed for them, so I get to pick my hours and things like that. And my roles slightly shifted from the beginning. I'm now more in the supervisor role. So I supervise therapists and see less clients, but I do a lot more group work in terms of grief groups.
Okay.
So yeah, I love it. I think I'll still be there for a very long time. Brilliant. Until they want to get rid of me.
I mean, being self-employed, is it more like a kind of like a flexi timetable, like you work when you need to or when you can, or do you still need to like stick to like a regular schedule each and every day?
Yeah, so being self-employed has its perks and its downfalls, I suppose, as well. Always in every kind of industry, but in terms of picking my timings and things like that, yes, I do get to do that. I have that privilege of being able to do that, but also on the flip side, not a privilege, because I guess I don't know, I guess you put more pressure on yourself to see more clients or do more things, because you've got that flexibility. I don't know, we can be our own worst enemies, can't we, sometimes?
Of course.
yeah, so but because I see clients, and within therapy there is a very traditional form of seeing a client at a specific time on a
Yeah.
specific day every week, or fortnightly, but you have to stick to that timing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't tend to shift my clients around at all. So when I have started with a client, they will have that same time on that same day with me until we
Okay.
finish.
Yeah. And do you do more one-to-one basis or groups or a mix of both? How do you tend to work with your clients?
Yeah, so I do a lot of one-to-one
Mm.
therapy. I have done family therapy as well in the past, couples therapy,
Mm.
group therapy, and they're all kind of special in their own unique way.
Yeah.
So I guess it depends on what's going on in that individual's life and what they're trying to get from therapy, and what they want from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your time at university, did they train you for, was it more specialized, saying like more on a one-to-one basis, or did they train you for both as well, like one-to-one couples and families and groups?
Yeah, so I guess with my MA, the good thing about the art therapy MA, it was you weren't restricted to who you wanted to work with.
Mm.
So you weren't restricted in terms of one-to-one therapy, whether you wanted to work with adults or children or elderly. So yeah, I guess I got a taster of everything.
Everything.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I worked with children
Mm.
at a primary school on my first placement, and we did one-to-one and we did group there. So I got an insight onto that, and then I did an inpatient ward again, which was, again, it gave me access to that kind of group therapy, open studio kind of therapy approach, and one-to-one. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was great to
That's
be able
brilliant.
to,
Yeah.
yeah.
And do you tend to work with, say, a minimum age of, say, like 5 onwards, or is it like literally any age you tend to work with?
Yeah. So personally, for me, I would say about 5
Mm.
onwards. And that is probably me, and me putting that age on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess for me, that's more about me thinking about the individuals, so the child that might come into therapy, what their understanding is of therapy, and
Mm.
obviously developmentally, their understanding is very limited, apart from my meeting this person once a week, and
Yeah.
we do some art together. But I definitely think that therapy has to be, um, I guess you have to consent in a way, and I
Mm-hmm.
find it quite difficult when a child doesn't really consent to it.
Yeah.
But then I totally understand that the parents or guardians or carers or other professionals need to intervene and make sure that that child has the right support around them. But
Mm.
yeah, so I tend to go with 5 onwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, is it more like, how do you get the kids to consent? Is it more the parents, like you said, or do they, once you explain what actually therapy actually is and the benefits of it, do they fully understand what you're actually trying to do, and then they consent to it after a while, or are they still
Yes,
slightly confused?
yeah, it's difficult. So it will have to be a carer or guardian, that will need to consent um
Mm.
to the therapy. I would have like an assessment with the guardian, carer, or and the child.
Yeah.
um and thereafter we would get like that consent from them. But I tried to make it quite clear to that child what it is, so
Mm.
just in a language that they will understand. So to give them that, I guess, to give them that choice, do
Mm.
they want to be here? Do they want,
Yeah.
does it feel like the right time for them, but in a way that feels like they can understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what kind of, you said about assessments there as well, what kind of assessments and kind of pre-tests do you do before you actually begin your therapy with these students at such a young age? What kind of things do you actually do beforehand to make sure that everything's okay?
Yeah, so through grief encounter, that's pretty much done like as an organization together.
Yeah.
And through private practice, I have to do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I have an assessment sheet where we kind of go through all risk factors of therapy, and we get a lot of information about the individual's background and history, and what brings them to therapy, if they're on any other kind of medication, if they've ever sought therapy in the past, and what sort of therapy, has it worked, has it not worked, and just to figure out where they are at and whether this is the right time for them, and what brings them right now into therapy right now. So that's sort of my checks before we start sessions, and then I kind of create a formulation after and think about whether it will be like once a week, whether it will be beneficial for me to see them fortnightly, and especially of their age. If they're 5 years old, we've got to really think about how much they're able to sit in a session. Traditionally, psychotherapy sessions and art psychotherapy sessions are 50 minutes. But if you're with a 5-year-old, I mean, their attention span is a lot less than an adult. So you really have to adjust a session in terms of their needs.
Of course.
So yeah, creating that formulation that meets that individual after an assessment is really important.
Yeah. And is each assessment completely different depending on the age, or are they fairly similar depending on who you're working with?
I have like a standard kind of form of questions, but I adapt my language in terms of whoever enters my room and my space. I have, we've got to be really careful and mindful how we sound to individuals. I guess how much, not to throw too much jargon at them, and for it to be really clear, and for people to really understand, because for a lot of people, they, unless you've been fortunate enough to think about therapy, or to have a family member, or really fortunate upbringing to think about people openly talking about therapy, I think it could be quite tricky space to enter with no knowledge of it. And I guess being able to prepare an assessment for someone that will really understand and will feel really safe in that space is so important.
Definitely.
So yeah, I pretty much go through my questions, but I adapt them in terms of whoever enters my space.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And do you also work with people that maybe suffer from, say, head trauma or some kind of Alzheimer's or dementia as well? Do you work with those kind of people as well? Or is it just a certain kind of bracket of people?
I've done a one-off kind of dementia group. Was quite that's going back a few years now. So I've done a dementia group, and art is really helpful again for that. Just using the whole body, creativity, what it represents, what different art materials. It's quite a playful activity as well. So I guess I really enjoyed that group, and I work with trauma quite a bit, and in terms of kind of PTSD or things that have happened in an individual's life to have a trauma response. But yeah, so mainly my clients that I see now are bereaved. So I work with children, adolescents, young adults, and adults that have been bereaved, and we work through their bereavements. And in private practice, I see kind of a variety of individuals going through a variety of kind of issues, from anxiety to OCD to trauma to depression, low moods.
Amazing. You're so good. And what got you into psychotherapy in the first place? Was it like through school, where you did art at school, and even back then, did you know that it had like great benefits to you? Was it like through back in school, or was did you have family members or friends that were doing similar sort of things to you? What got you interested in the first place?
No, it's that. Do you know what? I could talk about this all day. So art has always been there. It's always been there from young. So I started. So even if we go back to kind of primary school, I started primary school with not knowing a word of English. I never went nursery. My great grandma brought me up and she spoke to me in Cypriot Greek. So that's all I knew. I ended up starting primary school just thinking, what is going on? What are these children talking about? What are the teachers saying to me? I had no, I couldn't say anything up until year one.
Really?
But all I remember was feeling safe near the art. I go to the art, I draw, I even draw what I want to say. Sometimes hopefully they get it. And obviously later on, I think I was a very shy child, so art materials always came everywhere with me. So any family gathering, event, I had this bag packed, and whenever it felt quite overwhelming, I would go to these art materials and they will instantly ground me. So I knew for me personally, it was always there. I always found the kind of groundedness from the art. And then in secondary school, I took it up as a, sorry, something's just popped up on my laptop.
That's all right. That's okay.
I took it up for GCSE and then A level. I loved the art studios. Everything about art was just, it was always around basically. And then I had actually a close family member suffer from depression.
Really?
At the time that I was completing my A levels. And I guess I found that calming element when I was in those art studios and when I was creating art and when things felt overwhelming at home, and I would bring my kind of art material, my artwork home and share it with that individual, and you could just see kind of the life, like the life back in them, like wanting to know a bit about this art. And depression is so difficult. I mean, they didn't want to leave their beds. I mean, it was so difficult for them, but then being able to see that shift by just looking at someone else's art was when I started thinking, gosh, there must be some form of health benefits to this. Like this is just weird. And then I decided to do it as a degree. But didn't listen to my dad. My dad was like, what are you doing that for? You're never going to make money and all this. There's nothing to fall back on. People like us don't do art. Sorry, I've made him sound really high pitched. I did it. I did it as a degree, and on my degree, in my second year of my degree, I noticed something as a module, and it just said art therapy, and I thought, what is that? And then I took it up as a module, and I started learning what I basically knew, like the health benefits, how we can use art to improve our mental health. Yeah,
and when you're learning about the benefits of art, I mean, what kind of facts even shocked you? Like thinking, I didn't even think about that. That's amazing. Like I didn't know that can help people in such a way. Like what kind of facts did you find out that really shocked you or took you aback?
Yes, I guess there's so many, just even thinking about trauma and how trauma is stored in our bodies. And thinking about, well, how do we access that trauma in a safe way? I mean, a traumatic event is so difficult when you're working with a client that's gone through trauma. Like they tend to be, especially if they're in active trauma, they tend to find it really difficult to give you eye contact, to talk about, it's really virtually impossible to go to that place with them. but then noticing them use the art materials and the benefits of using the art materials and using your hands and being creative and going to a place that you don't need to use verbal articulation to go to that place was so interesting for me. I just thought, great, there's something that we don't need to use words, and I've always found it fascinating. I think language is amazing. We all need language, but it's also the creative language. Like there's another way of communicating with each other. It doesn't just need to be words. And sometimes I think I find that words can limit us. And I guess that's when I just thought, wow, this is amazing. Like, this is a way that we can all connect, whether English is your second language, whether there's trauma, there's something in the space and in the room with a client that is accessible for us all to use. And
that's why I find what you do so incredible, because I was exactly like you, where I was really shy at school, didn't really talk much, but my music was my way of expressing myself, whether it's playing piano or making my music up. And that was kind of my way of expressing myself in that format, which is incredible. And art is such an incredible subject as a whole, isn't it? No matter if you draw, you paint, you do music, it's so incredible in so many ways. And that's why me personally, as a teacher as well, I get upset when they cut arts from school. I think it's not important enough. I mean, do you do a lot of work with schools as well, if yourself? Or I know you've got your own private clinic, which is incredible as well. I mean, do you do a lot of work with schools as well? Is it mainly just when they come to you, or you do online work and you just do it that way?
Yeah. So before the pandemic, I did do a lot of work with schools. So and actually, I still do a bit of work with schools now, but especially with Grief Encounter, if I was meeting children or teenagers, it would usually be in their school environment. So I used to call myself a traveling art therapist. I'd pack this suitcase with all these art materials, stuff them in this suitcase, and liaise with the schools a lot about what I do as well, because I feel like we need to be able to communicate what we do, especially to people that don't speak our language in terms of our professional language. They don't really understand what we're doing. And especially when I'm wheeling in a suitcase with all these art materials, they're thinking, what on earth is going on here? So I did a lot of work with, a lot of schools in North London. I think I've pretty much covered absolutely every area and school in North London. And now I have limited that a lot of my work, because it's obviously shifted over the years, but I still do group therapy with a North London school. And so I've been doing it actually for the last year, even though on and off because of the pandemic. But visiting that school, doing group therapy with them for years 11, 9s and 10s.
Are you slowly going back to working more face to face now as well? Like we're coming out of lockdown slightly, or are you still mainly doing online work with them?
So I'm beginning to see a lot more people for face to face therapy. I love it. I love both, actually. I think there's great ways that we can use this online world as well. But I have began to start giving people that option. What do they want? And given that option for my clients that can work around them and their day is so important. So I've started seeing people in my private practice again, which has been great. And that has been it for now. Just privately, I've started seeing my clients again. But with Grief Encounter, it's still all online.
And do you tend to work with a certain client for a certain amount of time, say 6 weeks, or do you tend to work with them for as long as they need to get the full benefits of what you're actually doing with them?
So I think typically for the NHS, I think they offer, and depending with what you are coming to a therapist for, I think they usually offer 6 sessions, which is the kind of traditional form of the NHS work. But I think that the perks of private therapy, I think I don't put a time in on it. I treat every session and every individual in terms of their needs. So I tend to not go in, especially privately, I tend to not go in with a time limit. Sometimes it will be 6 sessions and that'd be great. Sometimes it could be, I've been seeing clients for about 4 years. And
wow.
And it just depends. And I think therapy is similarly, I guess we're always changing as individuals, and everything that we bring to therapy, everything kind of shifts from childhood to adolescence to adulthood to where you are at. So yeah, so it can literally depend on the individual. With Grief Encounter, they only offer 30 sessions, but it depends, and that's quite a lot of sessions for a charity. Yeah, so yeah, it for me, I hate putting a time limit on therapy because you just never know.
Exactly.
You never know.
Yeah. And 4 years though with one person, that's a lot of work, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah. That has been one of my longest piece of work with that individual. But I think again, it depends on what they're coming to you with, and if there has been trauma, that you have to tread so gently and take your time and make sure that that individual feels safe, and that therapeutic relationship is a trusting one, so between me and them, and that can take a while. That can really take a while to begin to start. So yeah, 4 years, but it's so amazing being part of our clients' journeys. I think we've got such a great job, and it's all thanks to our clients to be able to share their life with us and talk to us and share their journeys.
That is incredible. And like I said, what you do is absolutely incredible. So I'm really happy with what you do. So keep it up. Keep amazing work. We're going back to actually the kind of face-to-face and also Zoom as well. I was actually talking to Michelle Ackley, who's a good friend of mine, who's an amazing TV presenter. We were both talking about obviously what people are like online and in face-to-face as well. And we're actually saying that some people actually prefer, say, online because they might be in the surround of their own house, they can wear what they want, they're very comfortable. And did you realize that some people who might be very introverted before were actually more comfortable online, and vice versa, or that they were more comfortable being face to face with you to do their work? Did you realize that as well when you're doing the work?
Yeah, it's so, you know, that's such a, I mean, it's so true. We are in our comforts when we are online. Well, it really depends on your circumstances, doesn't it? Because home doesn't always represent safety. And actually, for a lot of clients, going to see your therapist and taking that journey outside of your home, that is safety. And that's a different environment. It really depends on what is going on again for that individual's life, you know. But for a lot of my clients, I did notice that shift. They were definitely a lot more comfortable. There was teas in the room, definitely a lot of tea, definitely a lot of coffee, a lot of chewing on biscuits, which you think, oh gosh, what do I do here with a therapeutic boundary? Yeah. And it's like, you can't, sometimes you can kind of try and say, you know, this is just like what it would be like if you were with me. But yeah, there were definitely, it's that, what do they call it? I've forgotten the word for it, but it's basically, it's a safety, isn't it? That screen, there's that distance between you and the other person. So I guess it's that space, that in-between space where you can almost role play as well. You can perform. It's, you know, there's a camera on you. You can perform. You can downplay something. You can pretend that you're really confident in what you're addressing or the issue, because I don't know, there's no, you're not sharing the same air and you're not in that space. And I guess for us therapists, we also really rely on that body language and sensing what someone, you know, what someone's saying and what words they're using, is it really matching up to what their body's telling me in that space? But we can't see anything from, you know, from head to shoulders now. So
I was just about to say, actually,
I mean, it's so difficult.
I mean, like, sometimes when you're working with them, then, or like I said earlier, it's so difficult to actually see what. Oh, sorry, my phone's going off. Sorry. But like I said earlier, it might be so difficult for you to work to actually read their body language because you see like their shoulders and above. I mean, sometimes do you even like say get them to say stand back and move back and say, okay, stop your work so I can see your whole body from there, or do you kind of have to
Yeah.
kind of work around it and just do work from here and above if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Luckily for me, because obviously I am a creative therapist, I think we do use our bodies in our sessions, whether it's online or not. And we've had to really start getting creatively we just had to creatively adapt to what we've got. And at the moment we've just got our screen. So I do it, depending on the individual, I kind of say, get up, bring me an object in the space that you're in that you feel connected with. And then they will kind of walk around their space, their room. I get to see a bit more about them, and then I get to see an object. And that's really interesting, because actually in therapy, we tend to say nothing leaves the therapy room and nothing enters it apart from the person.
Yeah.
So being in your own space, I guess I think for a lot of us, we started thinking, right, well, let's use this now. Let's use the space that these clients are in, their home space, and let them bring something that they want to bring in that can bring that comfort. Let's see how their bodies respond to this space. Let's see something more than their head and shoulders, basically.
Yeah, that is absolutely incredible. It really is. And actually talk about that kind of thing there as well. Obviously over the years, you must have heard a lot of stories that might even affected you over the years. I mean, how do you kind of deal with that yourself? I mean, do you like go back to do your art yourself, or do you even need a break sometimes from art to do something else, maybe like go for a long walk or do exercise like that, yoga or working out or read a book or something? How do you deal with that kind of overload of emotion, basically dealing with so many different people?
Yeah. I think over the years, I think things shift for you, whereas when something used to work, it may no longer work. For me at the beginning, I needed to have my own therapy alongside being a therapist, because I felt that was my outlet, that was my safe space, where if something felt like a trigger for me, I can use that space to go and communicate. Equally, making sure that my mental health as well is so important for my clients. I need to make sure that I'm in a good space in order to be able to connect with them. So at the beginning, and especially for the first 3 years, I had my own personal therapy. You always have to do it. It's mandatory through training anyway. But even after, I continued that for 3 years. And then I forgot my art. If I'm completely honest, I would do a lot of process art, which means after a session with a client, I would tend to do a 5-minute sketch or use some clay to just process what just happened with that client. And that's how I process my sessions anyway. So I do a little sketch, but that's all about what the client has brought me. And I've just put it out on the paper. And my own individual art, I didn't do anything like for a few years. And again, during lockdown, I got back into it. I thought, okay, I need to start getting back into my art, which I did, and focusing a lot on what was going on for me internally, not just for my clients. So I got back into that, and that was definitely very beneficial. But sometimes, especially if you've had a long day, especially if there's, just life in general is quite hectic. So I might not have time to get all my art materials out. I try not to, though, because that's the times when you mostly need to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, having a break from art is good too. I mean, I used to go for walks, walking my dog. I love reading. So a lot of novels, poetry, any sort of, music, any way that I feel like connects again. I think it's that word, that connection, that keeps coming in today. It's something to connect to other people around me. I always need that connection. And I started gong fu tea brewing in lockdown.
Really?
Not sure if you've heard of it.
Don't think I have. What is that?
So again, it's almost like a Chinese tea ceremony, they call it. So there's a lot about measuring tea leaves, weighing the leaves, checking the water temperature. It's all about getting you in that moment. So not just quickly dashing a tea bag in a cup,
Yeah.
as we do a lot of the time, and quickly drinking it and then leaving half of it and rushing out through the door. It's a real in the moment process where you sit and everything's about kind of being in the moment, down to measuring the leaves, to the temperature, to the little cups that you can kind of pour. It's all about remaining in that moment and doing a lot more rituals like that. It's a very ritualistic thing, which I find really beneficial.
That's brilliant as well. That's so good. I have to find that out now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think about actually, with what you do as well, do you also kind of recommend these sort of things as well to who you work with, or like say having a special diet or exercise to kind of implement further what you're doing, or do you focus on say like just do art and that'll be it?
Yeah.
Or just art?
Well,
that sounds bad for saying that, because it's amazing, but you know what I mean?
I try not to, because obviously I'm not a dietitian. There's professionals out there that are fully qualified in that aspect of things. But we do a lot of some clients will come in with kind of eating disorders, and we'll think about it, but in more terms of what it represents and where it stems from. I guess the only thing if I need to recommend something, it will be in terms of that moment thing that I spoke about, a lot about bringing us back in the moment, because a lot of, I think, anxieties and a lot of our worries that are to do with the future, something we can't control, or a lot to do with past events. And it's really important that we bring ourselves back into this moment. So I would even kind of say, even if you're going to have a tea with a tea bag, just concentrate on what we're doing in that moment. Concentrate on pouring the water with your tea and smelling your tea and sitting down and actually taking that moment to yourself. So I guess I would recommend things that are going to get us in tune with ourselves and make us self-aware and back in that moment. If I wasn't going to recommend art, which I always do.
But I want to finish off by saying thank you so much again for today, though. I could talk to you forever. I know how busy you are today, but Kristina, I just want to say thank you so much for today. I really love talking to you, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's been great. Thanks.
Thank you. And before we go, actually, how can people find you online as well, just in case?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. My Twitter's open, so Kristina Stamatiou. And I've got my website, which is, I believe it's Kristina Samatiou Therapy. There's terrible therapists are always terrible at promoting themselves.
I'll leave the link to the link below. It's fine.
Kristina Samatiou Therapy.co.uk.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And that's it for the episode. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.